Despite the rules for D&D 2024 moving in a very distinctly high fantasy direction, D&D Beyond has just released a new Unearthed Arcana with 8 horror-themed subclasses for your campaign. Can the core 5e rules actually capture the dark fantasy atmosphere of a world like Grimhollow, Drakkenheim, or Ravenloft? My name is Ben Byrne, and this is our reaction to WotC's new horror-themed subclasses for your D&D game. How do these horror subclasses stack up? Let's do a quick tier list. We're rating this tier list on 2 things. Is it an exciting subclass? Does it seem fun to play? And is it a horror subclass? Does it fit that specific theme? And we're gonna start with the Artificer Reanimator. This thing, I would honestly put this in A tier for both horror and is it fun to play. I think Jolt of Life is cool. I think the Reanimated Companion, that core feature of this subclass, while it does feel like a balloon animal kind of thing where you're just kind of conjuring reanimated companions, and we would rather, I would rather the Grimhollow approach to it previously where you had to spend a long rest to build a companion. It has that slightly bouncy feel to it, but it looks like it would be fun to have these companions, to make them do their death burst thing, to use these bloated, gaunt, and moist features alongside your reanimated companion all seem really fun. So it seems like a fun subclass to play. It just drops down to A tier in this list specifically because it's not quite hitting the horror themes hard enough, the dark fantasy themes hard enough, and the reanimated companions feel too disposable. You can just throw them away. You want them to use the death burst. It doesn't feel dark fantasy when something so horrible becomes so disposable and players don't really care about it. So flesh balloons, they're basically flesh balloons, as Umbra Venatir has said in chat. Bard College of Spirits, you know what? I'm gonna put this one in A tier as well, comparing it down to what's lower on this list. I think this theming is really cool. I saw Sinners recently, the Ryan Coogler film. It's incredible, it's amazing, I love that movie. This Bard College reminds me somewhat of that film, and I like that it's different from the College of Requiems in its mechanics, and that you're kind of like this haunted bard who channels the spirits through your music, possibly summons your ancestors, and they're able to aid you in combat and do other things for you, give you advantages in other ways. So I think this is also A tier. It's not terrifying as a subclass, but it does fit, I think, that horror and dark fantasy vibe of being surrounded by the spirits of your ancestors who you may have an antagonistic relationship with. If you want to play these subclasses in a full-on horror adventure, Ghostfire Gaming is currently giving away free D&D Beyond codes for Grimhollow Lairs of Etheirys. Lairs of Etheirys features 20 horror-themed adventures for levels 1 through 20, which you can add as side quests to your main campaign, or you can run them as spooky one-shots. There's also 70 plus horror-themed Grimhollow monsters included, which, let's be honest, that's the real reason to get this supplement, like the Fae-themed Bone Collector who bargains with bones, and the Shatter Corpse, which is a zombie pierced by shards of glass, which is disgusting. These adventures are perfect for horror-themed PCs, and you can have a chance of scoring one of these codes by clicking that link right up there, or the one in the description. Entries are closing and will be drawn after May 23rd, so get your horror-themed characters ready. The Grave Domain Cleric, let's throw it in B tier because I've thrown the other 2 in A tier so far. The Grave Domain Cleric just never felt, it's not as edgy as the Death Domain, and so it doesn't quite fit into that horror vibe super well. And because they changed the Path of the Grave feature to be more of like this curse feature rather than like a mass damage Grim Reaper your time has come feature, which is what it was previously, where it gave a creature vulnerability to the next damage of the next attack, which was could be a huge setup for a Divine Smite or a Barbarian or someone to do a huge amount of damage. It's still gothic, it's still spooky in that way. Ranger, Hollow Warden, straight to F tier for me. I don't get what's meant to, in the features of this thing, I don't get what's meant to be scary about it. I don't get the cryptid vibe super strongly, I'm gonna be honest. I think you'd rather play a mutation druid from Grimhollow or just a moon druid in general if you want to play something that transforms into other things. This Wrath of the Wild feature is not strong enough for me. You're concentrating on your own armor class, which is not a good position for a tank to be in, even if they give you other benefits to ensure you're not concentrating on it as much. I think this is probably going to be the one and only F tier, maybe. And it's also just not that spooky, you know, like Strangling Roots don't feel that spooky to me. I was never of a vibe of like the plant out of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, if I've got the right movie, feeling particularly scary, you know, it feels kind of more camp to me, and that's what some of these features kind of feel like. Rogue Phantom, I'm going to put that C tier. I think it doesn't quite do either of the things I want a Rogue Phantom to do. I want it to either be Ghostly Jim, who is like basically a ghost, which you get to with Ghost Walk, but that's at 13th level. That's the capstone feature. I would prefer that being a little bit lower down to get that flavor. Whales of the Grave is just a necrotic themed green flame blade with a greater range. That doesn't excite me super much, to be honest. It doesn't feel ghostly assassin, right? Like Ghostly Jim would. It just feels kind of like ghostly spread your damage out a little bit more. And then the Soul Trinkets feature, Tokens of the Departed. It's a cool feature. I like it, the theming of it. I wish this was more what this subclass was alternatively. If you're not going for the Ghost Assassin, Ghostly Jim, you're going for the Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden, like Ghost Hunter vibe, who can interact with spirits in some way. Shadow Sorcerer, I love the theme, but do I like the... look, points off for Shadowfell, you know, in the description. We already know that. Eyes of the Dark is fine. Yeah, my big issue with this one's gonna... where did I put? I put the Rogue Phantom C tier, didn't I? I think the Shadow Sorcerer... let's go B tier. I think I like it a little bit better than this Rogue. I think its features excite me a little bit more, being able to cast darkness and then see through that darkness. That's quite powerful, and there's no longer the kind of limitation of needing to have cast it with your spell sorcerer points. The Umbral Form, again, it's not that great because it's at 18th level by the time you get it. I wish that was earlier, so that definitely knocks it down, honestly, even though it's a coolish feature. Shadow Walk is fine. That feels like that could be an earlier feature, to be honest. Although, to an unoccupied space, you can see. Okay, so can you see 120 feet in darkness or dim light? I guess you can, because that's what this feature gives you, the Eyes of the Dark. Yeah, I don't know. I love the theming generally of a Shadow Sorcerer, and these features feel Shadow Sorcery-ish, but it doesn't really feel like you're actually stitching darkness together to create spells. I wish you could do more necrotic damage, more cold damage, you know, those sort of things through your spell casting, which you can't really do. So definitely B tier. Hexblade Patron is gonna go B tier as well. It's almost C tier for me, but I actually think the features work together if you want a Hex-themed Warlock. This should be, as we said before, the Hex Patron, not the Hexblade Patron. There's nothing in here that's bladey. You know what? C tier. C tier. I'm not going to down one. There's nothing in here that makes you feel like a martial warrior, except for maybe some of these spells, Wrathful Smite and Armor of Hexes, maybe. It's not inherently horror, like it's fantasy, but like bad things happen in fantasy. You have villains in fantasy that can cast curse-themed curses, and so nothing about it is particularly horror-themed or frightening. It doesn't reflect on the human condition or the horrors of the world in any particular way. I really don't like the changes to the Hexblade in general because there's no blade. It's the Hex Patron, really. It doesn't have Hex Warrior anymore, so you're not getting that proficiency with medium armor. You're not getting to use your Charisma modifier for weapon attacks anymore. So there's nothing in here that's like, there's no blade to the Hexblade. It's just the Hex Warlock. Maybe I'm missing something here. Has there been a change to, actually, might even just quickly bring that up. I just want to see if there's been a change to the base Warlock that means that you can use your Charisma modifier with like Pact of the Blade. I don't think that's changed. There was something about that with Baldur's Gate. Pact of the Blade allowed you to use your Charisma modifier, I believe. Pact of the Blade. As a bonus action, you can conjure a pact weapon to your hand, a simple martial weapon. So they moved that Hexblade feature into the core 2024 Warlock. Whenever you attack with a bonded weapon, you can use your Charisma modifier for the attack and damage rolls instead of using your strength and dexterity. You can cause the weapon to deal necrotic, psychic, or radiant damage, or its normal type. Sure, It doesn't really synergize particularly well with Pact of the Blade itself any more than it does with any other, which is fine because it means that you've got flexibility. You don't have to take a Pact weapon or Pact of the Blade when you take the Hexblade Patron, but it just feels like it's completely watered down. Warlock Undead Patron, I think, is also probably going to be C tier. I don't want to be overly negative here. I'm not trying to be overly negative. It's just too broad in terms of what your undead patron is, which is good for the flexibility. It allows you to define whether you have a vampire or a lich or a death knight or something else. It lets you, the player, decide that rather than it necessarily being locked into the subclass. But then it just waters down all the features to be kind of generally undead themed, temporary hit points, you're harder to kill, which we've already got a lot of in this Unearthed Arcana. Unholy Resuscitation. I kind of like this feature in a vacuum because it gives like this burst of necrotic damage to people nearby you as you are suddenly revived. There's something very cool about that, and I'm sure it would be very fun to have it trigger. But there's similar features. I think the Ranger was the other one that had it was the Ranger and the Sorcerer had similar features that just kind of, all right, this is just a repeated feature that a lot of subclasses have an avenue to get towards this, like you regain hit points a number of times your charisma modifier or level or whatever it is. So it's cool, but it's not super exciting on its own. Yeah, I just feel like with the Warlock Undead Patron in particular, if I want to play something undead themed or necrotic themed, I'm probably playing the Bard from this Unearthed Arcana because I just love that theming so much more, that kind of, haunted by spirits who are conjured by my music or my poetry or my art, whatever it happens to be. I think the features for that are a lot more enjoyable and a lot more interesting. I think that I would rather, if I'm going to play a Warlock of this style theming, I'd rather play, not to sound too self-serving here, but these are just the subclasses I know, I guess. I'd rather play Pact of the Vampire, which is or Vampire Patron, which is a Grim Hollow subclass, where like your level 3 feature is around dealing damage that allows you to regain health whenever you attack somebody. It feels vampiric, but it also feels flavorful and interesting. It's not just giving yourself temporary hit points by taking on the avatar of your patron's dreadful power. Or I'd play a transformation, the Lich transformation, the Vampire transformation, the Shadowsteel Ghoul transformation, because they're more horror themed, because they come with transformation flaws that allow you to get more powerful, but force you to grapple with the horror of the monster you're turning into, which none of these subclasses do, because they're meant to make your character feel cool and awesome. They're not meant to make you grapple with the existential dread of transforming into something horrible, but that innately makes them less horror themed. So that's the list. Honestly, I don't want to be too self-serving here, but if you want to check out some other horror-themed subclasses, you should watch this video where we break down some of the subclasses that are coming from Grim Hollow Transformed. Let us know if you think they're more exciting, more horror-themed specifically, or if you want to run a horror-themed adventure, you should watch this video, which is going to delve into how to frighten your players using their player characters and their backstories.